thought somebody breaking into your home or putting a gun in your face and robbing you warranted it a whole lot more than some petty dealer on a third offense or something like that. So sometimes it's that way. And we take all that into consideration. What law enforcement wants to do, you know, if it qualifies, just because it qualifies doesn't necessarily mean you'll seek it, because it may not be a real good case. There's lots of factors.
In the back, well, no, you, gentlemen, yes, right here. You've got it, thank you.
You feel that the judges that are currently sitting on the bench in the courts are adequately sentencing the criminals that you gain convictions for?
In all honesty, I think they are. The problem we're faced with, as we've all admitted, our system does depend on a fair number of guilty pleas. And the judges follow the recommendations that the prosecutors make. And they're kind of tied to that, because if they didn't follow the recommendations, then I think most everybody would quit pleading completely, and the system would break down. But I have met with some of the judges. They are frustrated. I just quoted one of them recently, Judge Maddox, saying he'd never seen so many two-day time served. I think the judges would like to be a little harder on some of the stuff, but I really can't speak for them. Just in the conversations I've had, they seem rather frustrated to me also.
One of the things is, when you're dealing with our local judiciary, is that it's discretionary. They have the ability to decide based upon the facts of the case, the prior criminal history of the individual, what law enforcement wants, and also the victim's input. And that plays a role in how they make a decision. And for the most part, let's make a noise. For the most part, I think they do a good job. But there are certain cases that they make a decision, and I don't agree with. I'm sure that each of the gentlemen up here have had cases where you don't agree with what the judge does. But the way I look at it, that's not my job. My job is to get it to that plea or to that trial. My job is to present it to a jury or to a judge. And then it's their job to make a decision on sentencing. And while I can say, I think that the judge, you ought to give him this amount, X amount of time, or this is what we're recommending, it's still up to them. And we're not always going to agree with what they say or what they do, but it's still, that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to make decisions and paid to sentence. I'm not going to slam any of them, because you still got to work with them. But overall, I think they do take a lot in consideration. It does help when law enforcement and victims show up and show an active interest into that case. And that I have seen, in my opinion, that the harder sentences that are given is when law enforcement is involved and the victims are actively involved. A lot of the cases we have, victims abscond, you can't find them, they don't want to cooperate. And so you typically have to get what you can out of a case. And even if it's like the drug cases, the question about the drugs, there comes a time and a point where you meet with law enforcement, they understand you can't hammer everybody. And the way the drug statutes are set up, you have to make an informed decision of what you want to do. And so when you get that case, and you look at it, and law enforcement sits there and tells you, says, hey, get what you can. This guy's really probationary. We got some issues. Then you work on getting such as a probationary sentence. And the way the drugs are set up, it's more of it's a three-strike type deal, because it enhances as you go along. So you get one, you say you plead to a possession of meth, and then 2 or 3 years later you get caught distribution of meth, and you may do a year. But the third offense, depending on the weight, you're looking at 25 years or more. And so, you graduate up. So I guess you have to earn your way up in the system. But overall, I think the judges do a good job.
I have a question going back to this.
Do you want to come?
Yeah, let me just, the only thing about what the judge's sentence is, I can tell you what, my last case was a couple of weeks ago. We had a very serious burglary first degree murder case out of Seneca was on the docket, where we went to pick a jury on Monday. The guy ended up pleading. I asked for a life sentence based on the severity of the crime. The judge gave 48 years. Am I unhappy with that? Probably so, because I think he deserved a life sentence. But in the big scheme of things, 48 years, he'll have to serve 40, 44, 45, whatever. you know, well, I take that back, murder, he has to serve day for day, so he'll serve the 48 years. And at his age, he'll be probably 70 before he gets out. So to be honest with you, I don't lose any sleep over that type of sentence. I would like to see a life sentence. And there's often times that we recommend sentences that the judges, they cut us, they give them less. And every judge is different, and you know, you never know, you know, what mood they're in, or you know, some are harder on some crimes than others, and it's all 25 years in this business. I have learned, you know, a lot who likes what types of crimes, or was harder on some than others, and all. And you'd never know. Every time you put a case up there, and you recommend something, they may give you less, they may not. It just depends. I mean, like I said, it depends on the judge, depends on the week of court. But we're not always happy with the sentences, but most of the time they are. There's some good judges in this state. We've got some good judges in this circuit.
You have another question?
My question runs to this whole management issue and the caseloads and this kind of revolving door of people going in and out and these very, very short sentences of time served or what have you. I keep hearing that there's not an awful lot of case management, I guess, on both the lesser cases. So do the individual attorneys have the authority to go and settle these cases on their own, or do they have to come to you and say, this is the case I have, these are the facts for a longer sentence, these are the facts against a longer sentence? What is the role of the solicitor as they go down through the ranks of management, which I guess are the deputies? What role would you have as solicitor in terms of controlling the plea bargains?
Hire the right people and trust in the people to make those decisions. There's too many cases that come into the, 5,000 a year coming in, roughly, split between the two counties, I think. There's just way too many cases for one person to keep up with. There's too many in Oconee County for me to keep up with myself, so I have to trust the people that work under me, who I do trust. One of the attorneys I've been working with for 11 years there, she's been prosecuting quite a long time, I think probably 15 years total. And another one of the attorneys been prosecuting for close to that amount. He's been an attorney in a long time. Am I always happy with some of the decisions they make? No. And if I find out there's an offer made or they're looking to do something that I wouldn't do, I'm probably gonna call them on it if I find that out. But most of the time, the sentences, and they're making the same judgment calls that I make on mine, and you're basing everything on the quality of the evidence, the prior record, law enforcement input, victim input, all those factors factor in. But the solicitor's not going to be able to keep up with every single case. But what you got to do is trust your people to do the right thing, and then hold them accountable if they don't. I trust my people in Oconee to do the right thing, and I think they do in most circumstances. Some of these cases that have been mentioned, a lot of those times those are judgment calls based on the evidence and the facts as we know them. Somebody sitting outside on the defense side may think, well, that was egregious or that was wrong, but they don't know everything about the case that we do. And we're not a rubber stamp for law enforcement or anybody. We have a different job in our line of work. Their job is to arrest people, keep the peace, enforce the laws. We take a second look at that and go from there as far as based on the evidence and what we can prove in court. And our ultimate goal is to seek justice in every case. Justice isn't always getting somebody the max or isn't always getting a conviction of a certain kind. We have to take all that stuff into account when we prosecute a case. So and you don't always get the outcome you want. It all based on the quality of the case. You can have a great case go in and a jury can do something funny. I mean, juries have different looks too. They're another mechanism for the court system. It's all like a big filter, Then when it gets actually to the judge may not sentence them like we discussed earlier. They may not sentence them to what we want. But that's the system that we work in, the system that we exist in. And I've been doing it for 25 years now, and it's not perfect, but I do think in most circumstances it works.
One of the things I think when you're talking about people that keep getting out is that the attorneys in the office need to start revoking bonds. The time you put handcuffs on someone to the time they're actually, the solicitor's office gets the file, it can be 2 to 3 weeks. In the meantime, they're out, they get out, they make bond, and they're committing more crimes. And that's where that communication has got to come in between law enforcement and our office. So when you got a guy that has 4 or 5 bonds, or committed 4 or 5 crimes and begin 4 or 5 bonds, enough's enough. That bond needs to be, he needs to be taken before a judge in General Sessions Court and his bond revoked, or the judge can put such restrictions on it, such as GPS monitoring or something, that makes the community, helps the community, makes it safe. Because he's obviously, typically they're hooked on drugs. Drugs are probably the root of most, I would say 80 to 90% of our cases deal with narcotics or some sort of addiction towards it. But we have got to get back to, if there's 5, 6 files of the same individual on a desk, my gosh, we need to do something about it. Because we know this guy's a problem. And we got to fix it. You know, the attorneys typically, like I said, you don't micromanage, you hire them. They went through law school, they're professionals. You expect them to act like professionals and do their job as a professional. So you hire the people, and it's their job to make a decision based on the evidence, law enforcement's input, victims' input, and basically using experience. Bouncing off other people to see what they think, what is a reasonable range. Our system is completely run on police. It's not a great system, you know, it's not perfect, but it's the best one in the world that we have. And everything in the court, like in the county, I think one of the gentlemen said that they had like 12 weeks of court a year. You can't try everybody in 12 terms of court. So you have to pick and choose which individuals you want. And that's where the plea bargaining, you have to do plea bargaining. Our system is built upon it. But there comes a point where you have to pick the right individuals. If you make a fair offer and they don't take it, there's consequences to that. And that's where they need to be put on a trial docket and tried. And they roll the dice. I've made an offer before and had them go to trial and they get more. I've had them get less, but that's their decision. So the point is plea bargaining is not necessarily all bad as what people think and you hear about in the media.